All right, so we're live, and I would like to welcome everybody to the newest addition to the video streams for the Integrated Health of Indiana. And this is part of our patient education program. And today we are talking to Miss Hannah Kleinfeld, who is COO of Omni-Biotic, correct?
Yes, exactly.
And I'm going to let her have the platform. And I would like you, if you do not mind, to speak about your company and give us a little bit of your story.
Sure, happy to. So thank you for having me, first of all. My story, kind of how I ended up at Omnibiotic and then how Omnibiotic ended up in the US is actually a pretty personal story. So I was born in Germany, and that's where my family was from. And I moved here when I was 10 or 11 years old. So I still had a lot of connections back to Germany. And a couple years ago, I came down with a really serious case of tick-borne illness, and it took a really long time to recover from it. And as you and your patients might know, these tick-borne illnesses often require antibiotics, heavy antibiotics over long periods of time. So I was going through this whole treatment. Antibiotics, of course, also working with a functional medicine doctor at that time to support my body in other ways, but the antibiotics were very necessary. And if you take antibiotics for a long period of time, the odds that your gut gets destroyed in the process are basically 100%. So as I was taking the antibiotics, I started recognizing a lot of different issues with my gut. I all of a sudden developed food allergies. I couldn't eat raw foods anymore without feeling nauseous, all these different things. And again, I was working with a functional medicine doctor and his team of practitioners here in the US and making good progress. But when I was back in Germany, I actually happened to speak with my doctor in Germany at the time too. And she said, "Oh, wow, if you're repairing your gut, you should take Omnibiotic." And I said, "What is that?" And she said, "Well, it's actually this, at that point, fairly new product here in the German market, and it's getting raving reviews, and people are in her practice were having great success with it." So I said, "Okay, great." So I, went to a pharmacy in Germany and packed like a few boxes and brought them back to the US. And I loved the products. I loved that they were not a capsule, they were a powder. So it wasn't more capsules for me to swallow. And I loved that I could take them at different times of day. And actually, the more I started learning about the products, the more their whole theory started resonating with me. And I also was feeling a really positive impact on my digestive system, and actually beyond the digestive system, right? Energy levels, cognition, mood, all these things started to improve. And as the stars align, like I was learning more about the company, I was telling my family about the company. Eventually, actually, I was able to meet the founder of the company in Europe, because these products had been around in Europe since over 25 years at that point. So, a very long history. I'll talk a bit more about the company later, but I kind of started to learn more about the company and eventually started to learn that they were looking to kind of maybe bring the products to the US. And that's how actually my family, it's a family venture here in the US, my family partnered with Instituto Lab, which is the company in Europe, to bring the products to the US market.
Oh, wow. And so, how are your, so just so you know, and the audience knows, I am very into the microbiome. We actually do the microbiome testing from Genova and from microbiome labs. We do the Biome FX. And it has been simply fascinating watching the research. And in every class now at the Institute for Functional Medicine, there is no getting away from the microbiome. They talk about it in every class. And so, as far as I am concerned, this is one of the key things that we always have to address. I know some people still don't even believe in probiotics and the microbiome, and I'm like, I don't know. If you read the research, you cannot.
Yeah.
So the company Omnibiotic, I am relatively new with using the Omnibiotic products. I'm actually going through the Hetox and using the glucomannan.
Yeah.
So I am trying that. I'm doing a very crude end of one experiment. So we'll see how that turns out.
That's great. That's how I started too, right? An N of one. Started realizing that none of products like that don't exist in the US. And every time I ran out, I got frustrated because I had to wait until I made it to Germany again. So that's how things started. Yeah.
And so, interestingly enough, do you know the history or why they weren't in the United States?
Yeah. So basically, the company in Europe, it was also founded by one individual. Her name is Anita Frauwallner. She was a pharmacist by training, actually, kind of in the 90s. And she was seeing a lot of patients or people coming into her pharmacy with all these issues, skin issues, digestive issues, and they kept trying new things. And eventually she was saying, hey, I have been reading about the gut microbiome. I've been learning about it. Why don't you try probiotics? And she started experimenting with her own probiotics. And that's how the company came to life. She started giving those products to her pharmacy customers. And eventually this whole huge now business that's in almost every country in Europe, globally expanding, was born. So also there, it was a very kind of from own personal experience and passion driven project.
Huh. Well, it's amazing how most of the innovation comes from a need and not from. I'm pretty disappointed. They say in functional medicine that it takes 17 years for standard of care to catch up with the research.
Yeah.
And that's just, I mean, it's just sad. And the people who are on the forefront of this get ridiculed and ostracized and all of that stuff. It's just it's not right. So how have you seen, besides the food allergies, what are some of the things you've seen with people that you know that take the products, and what have you seen? Give us some anecdotal cases that you've seen and played with.
For sure. Happy to. So I think one of the main things or most important things to realize with Omnibiotic is that the whole idea behind this brand is that there are targeted products, right? So it's not just, we didn't just take 5, 6, 7, 10 strains and like throw them together and hope that something will improve something. We actually said, no, we know that different strains do different things in the body. And we also know that different strains can either work in teams or kind of almost compete with each other or cancel each other out if they're put in the same product. So let's actually mindfully combine these strains to, come up with or make products that actually have outcomes in mind. So that's the first product. The outcome, was, okay, something for overall gut support and maybe to help with candida. That's how Omni-Biotic Balance was born. In Germany, it's actually called Omni-Biotic 6, but Omni-Biotic Balance. Then, Omni-Biotic AB10, the whole idea is when you take antibiotics, your gut gets destroyed. Let's find out what are the main strains that we need to restore the gut and to also kill potential pathogens that can start living in the gut if your normal microbiome is disrupted. So that's kind of the premise. So then if I think about, what happened for me, I took different products at different stages of my journey. So of course, Omnibiotic AB10 very much helped with gut restoration after taking the antibiotics. But then over time, I actually started discovering that my absolute favorite product is Omnibiotic Stress Release. That product, the strains in it are known to support the gut-brain axis. And for me, I think we're all very busy. We all probably are living too stressed of a life and are constantly thinking about the next thing. And what I started noticing is about after 3 or 4 months of taking the product, I literally felt more clear in my thinking. I could focus better. And, even my sleep was starting to be better. And as I was reading the research about Omnibiotic and the strains in it and talking more and more to Institut Allergosan, the company in Europe, I realized all the different connections between the gut and the brain. And so that's actually one of the main positive feedbacks we get, especially for stress releases. People are saying, hey, actually, of course, I'm having a positive impact on my digestion. But especially if I'm taking the product for a longer period of time, I'm noticing more resilience to stress, more focus, like that monkey mind that's constantly chatting in the background, that's decreasing, it's more quiet. So that's really, many people report, better cognition, better abilities to concentrate with stress release. With Omnibiotic AB10, very positive feedback for anyone who's suffering from antibiotic-associated diarrhea, because, you know, that's really uncomfortable. Many people get it after taking antibiotics, and most people feel a difference, a big difference in their bowel movements within 48 hours of starting to take Omnibiotic AB10. So you can imagine someone who's really not enjoying these side effects of the antibiotics, having relief very quickly is very important. And it's nice if you can do that for something natural rather than taking Imodium or activated charcoal or something like that, that many people don't even tolerate that well.
I actually still have a lot to learn about this, because I still am doing, when we do like a microbiome effects and we do an evaluation of somebody's gut, the docs that have done this now for years are down to the species, strain, subtype, and they're like, yeah, this is what you're lacking. And I'm always looking for stuff to add in. That's why I'm doing the detox for myself, blood sugar balance and normalizing hip waist and seeing what happens there. So, well, so you brought this to the United States from Germany because of your own personal experience. How have you seen it taking hold in America?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, you know, one of the things I didn't get into earlier, but one of the main reasons why we even had this idea to bring it to the US is because every time I ran out of Omnibiotic, I would try various products here in the US. But every time I was thinking, well, what is actually the goal of this product? And again, to me, it was missing this mindful formulation, this targeted approach, right? I don't know if like 5 or 6 strains or even just one strain is going to necessarily do what I want it to do. So what was completely kind of lacking in this market when we first introduced Omnibiotic here was really a line of targeted probiotics for different outcomes. And bringing that into the US has resonated very positively with people because, you know, many people, I've heard this from my friends, I've heard this from customers who say, I tried a probiotic, but it didn't work for me. And I say, okay, what did you do? Like, what did you try? What do you mean it didn't work for you? And also, what were you trying to accomplish? And they say, you know, whatever they say. And it's like, well, did you actually check that this product, the strains in this product actually would have helped you with what you wanted to accomplish, right? If you're trying to heal or whatever, if you're trying to support a strong gut barrier and maybe you have leaky gut and you're trying to restore your microbiome to reduce some of that inflammation, not every probiotic on the market is going to do that because maybe one probiotic has just one strain that's supposed to help you with diarrhea. Well, that's not going to do the same as helping you with leaky gut. So that's kind of the first question I always ask. And then the second question is, okay, once you have identified whether it's even going to help you with the right thing, do you know it has a good, you know, delivery mechanism? Is what you're taking actually going to get into your large intestine and small intestine where the probiotics do their work? And then also there's many other issues potentially with just a random product, right? Are the strains still alive when you get them? Do they have lactose in it and you are actually reacting to lactose? So no wonder you felt horrible every time you took one of these probiotic capsules. So it's interesting. So back to your question, kind of what has been the reaction to people? I think people are very intrigued by this very new concept that you need different probiotics for different outcomes. And then people who try it generally feel really good. They feel an effect, you know, they love that you can, I have one here. It comes in these like little sachets, which is great because I have one in my backpack. I have one in my handbag. You can easily take it on the plane when you travel, right? You just mix it in a little water. It's easy for people to take who don't like to take pills. It's easy for children to take. So, yeah.
It's very interesting that you bring up the bad products that are out there, because there are studies out there that show that a lot of the stuff they take off the shelf is dead in the water, and the quantum sensing that they get from the probiotics isn't even working with the dead products. And it's very, so just for the people that are listening, when she's talking about the bacteria that help the gut, the bacteria that increase the what we call secretory IgA. That is the slime layer that is above the villi that allows, those are the physical barriers between your gut and the bloodstream. And you don't want things that are in the gut, all the stuff that's breaking down, you don't want that into the bloodstream, because as she experienced when she was taking antibiotics, it breaks down the secretory IgA, and then it starts to break down the tight knit junctions that are there to keep that stuff out. And that's why people start to develop allergies. That's why people start to develop food sensitivities. All of these things start to develop out of that. And what she is talking about also is there aren't very many very targeted probiotics, and the companies that are coming out now with this are trying to do the research, and they're piggybacking off of companies like Omni-Biotic and off of like the microbiome labs and stuff like that, because things are not created equally. I mean, as much as I love my Ford truck, would I rather travel a long distance in a Mercedes or my Ford? Mercedes. It's just the quality is better. And that's, you know, that's, I'm a car guy. That's my analogy, that you're stuck with what you got there.
Yeah.
So is there, speak to strain specificity, because I don't think people realize that when you talk about lactobacillus, that's the family. And we have to start to get down to the individual people.
Right. So my favorite analogy for that, you're the car guy, I'm a dog person. So my favorite analogy for like the strain versus substrain is really this idea that like, okay, there's dogs as a category, right? That would be your species, like lactobacilli. And then you can probably categorize that in like small, medium, and large dogs or whatever. But then, you know, a German, or well, actually, maybe let's get, sorry for anyone who like doesn't know dogs that well, but I hope you get the point. Like, even a golden retriever and a Labrador, right? They're both retrievers, but they actually look different. They have different personalities, whatever. So that's kind of the level when you see something that's like Lactobacillus acidophilus W52 or whatever, some number, that's that level that tells you exactly what type of substrain it is. And different substrains do different things. Of course, there's more than one strain that does a certain function in the body. For example, there's multiple strains that help, you know, mucus production or short chain fatty acid production. But you want to get that specific because sometimes a certain one of these substrains is very well known, for example, to help inhibit C. diff. And of course, that's a great characteristic to have for a strain that you would then put into a product like Omnibiotic 8010 that helps restore your gut after antibiotics and also keep some of these bad guys out. So if you're especially if you're thinking about very targeted probiotics, like you want a probiotic that really helps fight pathogens or helps fight yeast or candida, that's when you want to get really specific, because you want to use the strains that are like your superstars in, you know, fighting these pathogens. I think on the other hand, which I always find so interesting, is we know that bacterial strains work in teams. So you can kind of envision this as like your football team or something, where it doesn't make sense to just have a billion, I don't know, quarterbacks, right? Like you need a well-balanced team that they can all work together to accomplish something. And that's why we don't just have those like gut microbiome restoring or pathogen fighting strains in a product. We also pull in a strain that produces short chain fatty acids, maybe one that stabilizes the gut barrier. And that's how the products are formed. And then we actually test them in clinical studies to show, hey, guess what? This product actually works in humans, and here are the results.
That's awesome, because that actually, the analogy with the dogs is fabulous. The cars are fabulous. It really is a team thing with these types of bacteria. And you've got to really, something else to take into account. I want to make two quick points. When your microbiome is off, the system is stressed. And so you're going to release cortisol. This is part of the HPA axis that Hannah was talking about. Your your cortisol is going to be off, your insulin's going to be up, your blood sugar is going to be off, your inflammatory markers go crazy, whatever. And how this, let's bring us back into the wheelhouse of a chiropractor, is when people are inflamed, you're not going to hold your adjustment. Yes. And that's why you'll get the headaches coming back, or that's why the back pain recurs.
Yeah.
And if you have people that have problem with their gut and the gut is breaking down, they're going to have what feels like a hip issue, but it could be in the ascending colon. I was just listening to Dr. Mark Hyman today, and he was talking about diverticulitis and how people that have diverticulitis on the left side often mistake that for hip and back pain. And that's why it keeps coming back. And so we have to get out of thinking in this reductionist way that we all think about. What Omni-Biotic, what Hannah's company does is helps a piece of the human being, just like chiropractic helps a piece of the human being. And if you don't support the microbiome, it is transient. Next time you go drink a soda, or my favorite thing is Hannah, did you know that there is more glyphosate per serving in Cheerios than vitamin B12, and we add B12 to Cheerios?
Yeah, that is a scary statistic. And, I think it just gets to, I always think, when people say, hey, do I need to take a probiotic every day or all the time? I always say, well, if we could still all live on farms and eat our own homegrown vegetables, and there was like no pollution and the soil is clean and not overused and all these beautiful things, and we weren't stressed and we all meditated every day and drank super clean water, then we probably would not need a probiotic, right? But like, how many people have the luxury to actually live like that? Very, very, very few people. And all these lifestyle factors, processed food, alcohol, certain medications, stress, they all negatively impact the microbiome. So yes, it makes sense to keep replenishing with the good so the bad can't start to grow. Because I think, to your point, once you have this dysbiosis or imbalance of gut bacteria, it starts this whole cascade of issues. And then all of a sudden you find yourself with food allergies or neck pain, back pain, inflammation. You don't feel like moving your body anymore. And then that kind of just starts a whole cascade of negative effects.
So you're saying that if you don't live in Eden or Nirvana, then you probably have to maintain these things.
For most people, that would be a good idea, yes. Or at least have your microbiome tested, right? Like that's the first step to see.
Well, and it, like they say, it changes. And think about this, folks. If you do a DNA test, depending on who you listen to, 90% of your genetics are actually bacterial, not even human. And so you need to support that. And we just really don't. Actually, I bet you could, since you go back and forth to Europe, you could probably tell the difference in the food systems and food delivery systems and the way that you eat. I love America and I love living in America. I love the capitalistic society. That's all fabulous. I, however, do not like our political system that allows things to harm people. And I don't want to get political though. Sorry.
No, but you're right. I mean, I think one of the things that I love the most when I go back to Europe is just the amount of farmers markets you see, especially from spring to fall, is unbelievable. And many people truly still try to buy as many of their vegetables and things at these farmers markets. And it's more seasonal. You might not find grapefruits and whatever the fall or whatnot, or strawberries in winter, but I think that connection to food is so wonderful, and understanding, where the food comes from, and as much as possible trying to avoid pesticides, because that is very harmful.
Well, speak to that point for just a second. What feeds the microbiome?
Yeah, that's a great one. So, we've talked a lot about what kind of can harm the microbiome, but one of the really really important sources of what we take in on a daily basis is fiber, specifically insoluble fiber. And you get that mostly from vegetables and some of the grains and legumes. So, kidney beans, chickpeas, lentils, oats, brown rice, but also your sweet potatoes, your broccoli, all the green vegetables. And I actually, every time I look up the statistics, I feel like it's starting to grow, but a huge amount of Americans are not meeting their daily fiber intake. I forget, but it's like, I want to say over 70%, but I might be misquoting, but it's like a really big amount of people. And, even that alone, if your gut microbiome doesn't have the right foods, how is it supposed to continue to live? And then on top of that, if you keep adding bad things like alcohol, sugar, processed food into your system, you keep pouring in bad, but you're not really replenishing the good. So I think that's, and then the other thing, which is so simple, but everybody forgets it, is just hydration. If your gut and your whole system isn't hydrated with water, not with soda or anything, with water, then, then your mucous membranes are intact, your digestion goes, you don't have anything sitting there for days, just drying up. It needs to move through your body and detoxify properly. So just keeping that in mind, like increasing your fiber, increasing your water intake, and then maybe trying to incorporate some, fresh vegetables and things into your diet is already a really great step into the right direction.
Well, as a side note, to back up your saying there, Hannah, the average American gets between 8 and 12 grams of fiber. If you go to see the Hudza, they do 120 grams of fiber a day, I believe. And then once again, sorry, I'm a fanboy of Dr. Hyman, so I'll go back to, they were just talking about weighing the stool of the people, and the Hudza and the hunter-gatherer tribes, it's about 2 pounds. And for Europeans, I think in this, they were talking about the English, UK, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of like a quarter to a half a pound for movement. That's constipation, folks. And I will say that the glucomannan product that you guys have,
Omni-Biotic Plus?
Yes, the Plus. That stuff, I just started taking it, and I generally have 1 bowel movement a day, sometimes maybe 2. And that started to act as kind of like a promodal. And I went 3 times the last couple of days, and I was like, that's interesting. And my smoothie contains about 50 grams of different types of fiber. I get more fiber in my smoothie than most people get in like 2 or 3 days. But like, to your point, that's absolutely needed. And I'm 50. So I have to maintain my system a lot more than somebody who is younger.
Yeah.
Well, if there's anything that you could do to make an impact, so if there was any one thing that you could change to make the biggest impact on people, what would that be?
And something that is completely outside of my control, but that I just wish, is that the healthcare system as a whole would shift to kind of acknowledge more the importance of preventative care. And I think one of the things, the amount of money that somebody who's maybe trying to work on their health might have to spend on doctor's visit, even stool testing and things, and supplements, it's a lot of it is still out of pocket. And if some of that could be reimbursed by health insurances, or somehow, just help reduce the total cost of care for people who are trying to work more in functional medicine and holistic medicine and seeing their chiropractor and all these things, I think that would be wonderful. If I'm focusing on something that's more inside of my control, I think any chance I have, and we have at Omni-Biotic, to help people better understand, like, what are the signals that their body is sending them, to maybe give them clues about their health. I think just, trying to give people those tools to understand, my brain feels foggy, or, oh, I'm actually only going to the bathroom every other day, or wait, since a few weeks, I feel bloated and nauseous every time I'm eating. Like, these are signals your body is sending you that something is not quite right. So then helping people have the tools to understand what are these signals, and maybe what can I do to find out if that is truly the issue or not, kind of trying to become your own detective a bit more, and working with healthcare practitioners who kind of are experts in that field. I think that's something that I strive both personally and also at Omnibiotic to really help people with.
Well, that's wonderful. And I will say my wife is going to feel so bad that she missed this one, because she is a dog person as well. So it's probably good that she wasn't here, because you guys would have hijacked the stream talking about dogs.
That is possible.
But with all of that said, I'm happy that you guys are in the Institute for Functional Medicine. That's where I found you guys. I think you're in with the right group of doctors, because everybody thinks that way. It's now getting educated. The doctors need to be educated. Love your white papers. Keep putting those out so that I get educated on the strains and my colleagues get educated on the strains, because everybody likes to put doctors on this pedestal. And we're just people too. And we only know what we get, what we see and what we hear and what we read. And it's really hard for us to read everything that comes out. So the white papers and the word of mouth and telling people to tell people, that helps.
That's for sure.
And so thank you for what you do. And for everybody that's listening, this is Hannah Kleinfeld of Omni-Biotic, and they are one of Integrated Health of Indiana's. We use their supplement line for the very reasons that Hannah was talking about. It is targeted. It looks at specific conditions and what we can do to help those conditions. So thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for bringing this to America. I love the products. My patients are starting on the products, and it's going to be great.
Thank you for having me. And yeah, I'm excited to hear from you what your patients say as feedback once they started trying Omnibiotic.
We'll let you know. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.